Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
Well, earlier today, Ted Cruz came out and said that a lot of the popularity we're seeing surrounding Donald Trump is due to the fact that he has a lot of low information voters who also are not very politically engaged. Now, coming up later in the segment, we're going to be watching a video of one of these seemingly low information voters who assaulted someone at a Trump rally, which is, of course, feeding right into the establishment media frenzy of all of these race politics. Now, that gentleman has been charged with assault. But joining me now is David Knight. And David, let's talk about what Ted Cruz has to say about Donald Trump's voters being relatively low information, not very engaged. What do those supporting Ted Cruz need to know about him?
Well, I would say, Leanne, that what we're seeing from Ted Cruz when he says this, I think it really shows an elitism that lies under a thin veneer of pretending that he is an outsider, that he is not part of the establishment. Look, if you believe that Ted Cruz is an outsider, that he's not a part of the establishment, you are the low information voter. We're going to talk about this, but first, let's talk about the idea that they're not engaged. I mean, who is turning out the biggest crowds?
Right.
Who is creating the largest ratings that we've ever seen for debates? Who is getting record turnout for voters?
Exactly.
Okay. Who is going across demographic, geographic, and party lines to get support? That's Donald Trump. It's not Ted Cruz. He can only wish that. Now the establishment is coalescing behind him. We're going to talk about that. But first, I want to talk to people who are falling for this idea that Ted is the evangelical candidate out there. Of course, he loves to parade his piety in public. And when people call him on it, we see some very disturbing trends against us. And of course, we're all familiar with what happened with Ben Carson. He had to get rid of the other person that was his competition for the Christian vote. And so he did that by telling lies. And then when he was caught on it, he lied about the timeline. It was made known immediately as that first tweet went out, it was made known that Ben Carson was not getting out, but they waited another half hour. And then for a half hour for a full hour, they told this lie to try to get Ben Carson out. We've also seen him spread lies for 2 days about Marco Rubio, saying that he was trolling his dad, saying there's no answers in that book pointing to the Bible. That was not true either. Eventually, he had to take that down, and he had to fire the staffer to pull that back. But I also am bothered by the way that he has trolled Donald Trump for the shibboleth of saying 2 Corinthians. Of course, you know, Donald Trump is a low information Christian, according to Ted Cruz. And I have to ask the Christians out there, is it really worth it? Would you, if you were running for president, would you throw somebody under the bus? And would you say to everybody out there that, hey, if you don't know how to pronounce 2 Corinthians, if you call it 2 Corinthians, you don't need to come to our church. You don't need to look for Christ, because we're only looking for the high information Christians out there. That's the kind of elitist snobbery that you can expect from somebody who, as a high school student, said he was going to dominate the world. That's why you go to these Ivy League schools, so you can make the kind of connections that he's made with the Bushes. And we're going to explain that to you as well. But of course, there's one more thing I want to talk about, and that is his lying about tithing. Of course, he was called on that multiple times because Ted doesn't tithe. That's something that some Christian churches teach. I don't believe that it's something that is necessary, but to give less than 1% of your income to charity. And then when he's called on it, he puts out a lie, says, well, you know, that was 10 years ago. No, it wasn't 10 years earlier. It was 5 years earlier. It was a period of time, he said, when he was starting a family. No, it wasn't a period of time when he was starting a family. So when called on this, all of this is a lie. But let's talk about the fact that he's a conservative. No, he's a neoconservative. He's a neocon. Just back in December, we had National Review, which is a neocon publication, furious at Ted Cruz because he's throwing the word neocon around. They say an influential chorus within the Republican establishment is raising questions about whether Cruz can be trusted on foreign policy. Among this crowd, Cruz's use of the term neocon was seen as the latest evidence of his willingness to elevate politics over principles on matters of national security. They say the term neoconservative is used to describe George W. Bush's hawkish foreign policy views. They say the term had become radioactive. Others, like Elliot Abrams and Elliot Cohen, these are people who are now his supporters, people who are now attacking Donald Trump, said this is something that's used in the far left, the far right parlance. It means a warmonger. It is not something he should have done. He says it's an epithet. It's used pejoratively, says Elliot Cohen, a Bush administration State Department official, because those are the quintessential neocons. And then another Bush administration Defense Department official says simply, it was a dog whistle. This is what he does. He sends out these dog whistles. He climbs over the backs of his Senate colleagues. Immediately as he's elected to the Senate, he wants to run for president. So he trashes his Senate colleagues, okay? And even though he supports neocon militaristic policies, he uses the term so that he can get people to think that he's an outsider because he's made enemies with this. But now let's take a look at the reality. We have been telling you for months, even before the National Review was complaining about the fact that he was using the neocon so they could portray him as an outsider, we were telling you that he was a consummate insider.
Right.
That this was a lie that he was projecting to people. This is Infowars back in February. Kurt Nemo pointing out he's routinely billed as a Tea Party outsider. And he says it's not simply his connections with his Goldman Sachs investment banking wife or the unreported loan from Goldman Sachs. No, it's people like his campaign manager, Chad Sweet, who co-founded the Chertoff Group with former Homeland Security Director Michael Chertoff, both the Bush and Obama administrations, who advocated for expanding the NSA metadata collection. It's also the fact that Sweet worked for the CIA's National Clandestine Service, according to his biography. They say there's also the fact that one of his advisors has now become James Woolsey, the former director of the CIA during the Clinton administration, who famously said that Ed Snowden should be executed. And he sums it up by saying, Ted Cruz is not even remotely a libertarian. He is a neocon masquerading as a champion of liberty. If nominated and elected, he will continue the forever war agenda that was initiated by the Bush regime, further expanding the high-tech surveillance police state. Unfortunately, many Republicans are buying into this illusion.
Right.
We're also told the same thing by the New American. You can see this infographic that basically shows the connections of these people like John Bolton, always pushing for war, okay? And the New American points out that he has his lips draw nigh to the Bill of Rights, but his heart and his personally chosen counselors are far from it. And we can go on into the counselors, but you can see it there in that infographic, the many people that are there. Now what's happening is the fact that we have the Bushes joining forces behind Ted Cruz.
Right.
And we saw it first with Neil Bush becoming one of his finance advisors. I mean, the hypocrisy, the insanity of that you would want somebody like that to be your finance advisor when he was behind the savings and loan scandals, when he kicked all that off. But then also the fact that we see with Jeb Bush that he is meeting with all of the candidates except Donald Trump. Now, as this is pointed out in The Hill, they say Bush is huddling with Cruz, Rubio, and Kasich before the Miami debate tonight. And of course, Thursday is the primary in Florida. They say it's unclear whether Bush will endorse one of them as a candidate. No, look, this is what's going on. He's not going to endorse them. The Bushes are coalescing, just like the rest of the establishment, behind Ted Cruz, who has always been a part of the establishment. And he was someone, as Roger Stone pointed out today in this article, he says on the Daily Caller, he says that he has always been a part of the establishment. The Bush-Cruz connection is clear. Ted was George W.'s brain when he ran for president. He was a top policy advisor. Ted maneuvered for Solicitor General in the Bush world, but he settled for a plum at the Federal Trade Commission. Ted is a Bushman with deep ties to the political and financial establishment. That's what we're just pointing out to you. You need to look at these people, understand his connections to the financial and political establishment. He is not the outsider. He says Ted and his wife brag about being the first Bush marriage. They met as Bush staffers. Okay, she served under Condoleezza Rice, who was pushing the Iraq War and so forth and so on. Now, understand what is going on with this Bush meeting with Kasich, Rubio, and Cruz. Okay, there are arms that are being twisted, deals that are being made, offers being put on the table. He would like to see these guys drop out and coalesce behind Ted Cruz. That's what the establishment is saying. That's what Rush Limbaugh is advising to have happen, okay, so that Cruz can become the winner. What he really wants to do is make a case for himself. He sees the parallels to his father, George H.W. Bush. Ronald Reagan was anointed as a conservative. And Glenn Beck and the rest of the establishment media, Fox News and others, have been establishing Ted Cruz as a conservative. We just told you why he's not, telling people that he is the outsider. But that is what they're selling people. If people believe that, and he can position himself as a Ronald Reagan, What Jeb Bush would like to do, I believe, is position himself as a George H.W. Bush to say, I have the moderates, I have the establishment that I can deliver for you, or we can oppose you. We can make you a king, or we can take you down. How about it? Make me your vice president. That's what's going on right now. That's what we need to be aware of. And you need to understand who the real outsider is. It's Donald Trump. It's not Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz has been a shill all along, and Marco Rubio has been his stalking horse.
Yeah, and this is such key information. It's so important right now because they are really on the attack, the establishment on the other end, really wanting to push Ted Cruz out there. And it's interesting that you talk about him being sort of this wolf in sheep's clothing coming in, because Glenn Beck, who's really been pushing him, that's how I've always seen him.
Yeah.
Just watching him totally flip-flop when he worked for Fox News, and then was completely against Ron Paul. And then as soon as the election was over, now all of a sudden he's all for Ron Paul. He represents the Tea Party. He leaves Fox News and goes and starts, and he's the voice for the Tea Party.
Glenn Beck
like
is
Ted
always
Cruz
offering us a Trojan horse.
Right.
Always offering us a Trojan horse. And you can see the mask come off when it's really, when the chips are down. We saw that happen with the Bundy Ranch. Okay, we're seeing it happen again now. When the chips are down, he always offers us the Trojan horse. And of course, Rubio has been the stalking horse.
Well, like I said, this is key information. Thank you so much, David Knight. Be sure to share this video with everyone, because what everyone is seeing is this video that is making the rounds over and over, looping 24-hour news cycle. You're seeing it again and again, is this assault that took place at a Trump rally. And of course, this is feeding right into the racial politics, the racial divide that the establishment is using to try and take down Trump.
Joe Biggs here with Infowars.com with an update on something that has happened in the last 24 hours. Something that is probably the most horrendous act ever carried out on American soil. No, not Pearl Harbor, not even 9/11, something far worse than that. This is the punch heard round the world. And now we're going to bring in Darren McBreen to talk about this. Now, Darren, hey, we're not at a Trump rally, man. Come on. So what's going on right now? We're flipping through all the news channels a second ago, and all I'm seeing is this incident that kind of unfolded where someone got punched at a Trump rally.
It's on every single channel. I mean, you can't get away from it. By the time you see this video, you've probably already seen the video of Rakeem Jones, who is a protester at a Donald Trump rally, and he said he was there as a social experiment. Well, him and his friends went to the Trump rally. They started yelling at Donald Trump. As soon as Donald Trump got on the stage, they were quickly met by security and police officers who then began to escort them out of the building. And then a 78-year-old man named John McGraw sucker punched Rakeem in the face. It looked like it was an elbow or maybe a punch to the face. It was hard to see from the angle that I was looking at. And then the police officers, rather than apprehending the guy who punched Rakeem, they went after the black guy and they escorted him off.
Yeah, so basically what you're saying is you have a group of people who went looking for trouble. They found trouble, and now they're crying.
It was a social experiment.
Oh, okay. So they found that experiment. They got their cause in effect, and now they're complaining about it on national TV. They're being held up as these heroes.
National heroes now. Hillary Clinton's already been asked about it.
Count me among those who are truly distraught and even appalled by a lot of what I see. Mr. Trump should not be urging people on. This is deeply distressing, and I think as the campaign goes further, more and more Americans are going to be, really disturbed by the kind of campaign he's running.
All you're going to see for the entire weekend, you're going to see this again and again and again. And this guy, Rakeem Jones, is going to be a national hero. I'm going to predict it right now. Barack Obama is going to invite Rakeem Jones to the White House. You watch.
This is something that they're trying to use. They're doing everything they can to go and derail Trump. They know that people are showing up to his rallies. They're emotional.
And I want to say one more thing. By the way, at this rally and the average Trump rally, there are people of all color. All right, there's lots of black folks there. There's lots of every race and color you can imagine is at these Trump rallies.
It's something you never want to see happen. But again, it's not connected to the campaign whatsoever. It's something that happened in the crowd by bystanders.
Yeah, I guess, Jeff, what some would say here, and let me ask you, some would say it is connected to the campaign, or maybe it's connected to the campaign in terms of the tone and the atmosphere that the candidate himself is creating.
But MSNBC is going to continue to play this over and over again. You're going to know that name, Rakeem Jones, by heart at the end of the day. Stay tuned for more reports about the punch heard round the world. I'm Joe Biggs with Infowars.com.
My fellow Info Warriors, I am very excited to be able to announce to you the introduction at InfoWarsLife.com of a new way to save time and money when you stock up on InfoWars Life formulations like Survival Shield X2 and Super Male Vitality. Just go to InfoWarsLife.com today, select your favorite product, click on Auto Ship before adding to cart, and choose how often you want us to send you another order. Every time you choose Auto Ship at InfoWarsLife.com, you get 10% off, and you won't have to worry about running out and having to reorder next time. And of course, you can cancel with one click anytime. As you know, I'm all about the idea of a 360 win, and the new auto ship feature at InfoWarsLife.com is a sure win for everybody. A win for liberty, a win for health, and a win when it comes to big savings. Visit InfoWarsLife.com today and save 10% on your next InfoWars Life order by selecting auto ship at checkout. That's InfoWarsLife.com or call 888-253-3139.